Fear Switch, The Heart of Kali Kai by Elton Thomas. Chapters 31 through 36. Chapter 31, A Warning from Within, Boss's Loyalty Test. As the warmth of the Festival of Nations celebration faded into memory, the dojo settled into a tense rhythm. The threat from Raja still loomed, and each training session became more intense, charged with a quiet determination to be prepared for whatever lay ahead. Andrew noticed it in his students' eyes, in the way they pushed themselves through each drill with a dedication that went beyond the physical. They had seen what Kali Kai represented at the festival, had witnessed its impact on the community, and now they carried that strength with them, each of them committed to protecting the legacy they had come to cherish. Baus, however, seemed to carry a different weight. Although he had found support within the dojo, a shadow lingered over him, an unspoken tension that clung to him like an invisible burden. Each morning, as he joined the others in practice, his movements seemed to carry an edge of hesitation, a lingering doubt that haunted his gaze. It was as if a piece of his past still held him captive, an invisible chain that kept him tethered to the life he was trying to leave behind. One evening, as Baus was leaving the dojo, a figure stepped out from the shadows, blocking his path. Startled, Baus stopped, his instincts flaring as he recognized the man standing before him. One of Raja's followers, a former comrade who had once fought beside him. The man's face was hardened, his eyes cold, a mixture of anger and resentment twisting his features as he looked at Baus, a silent accusation in his gaze. "Boss," the man said, his voice a low growl, "you've changed. You think you're better than us now, don't you? Following that pacifist Andrew, pretending you're someone different." Baus clenched his fists, a surge of anger mixing with a pang of shame as he met the man's gaze. He wanted to deny it, to distance himself from the person he had once been, but a part of him still felt the weight of loyalty, a remnant of the brotherhood he had shared with Raja's followers. "I'm just trying to find a different path," he replied, his voice barely above a whisper. The man sneered, stepping closer, his posture tense, his fists clenched at his sides. "Raja won't tolerate betrayal, boss. You know that. And he's not happy with your little defection. He's giving you one chance to prove your loyalty, to show that you haven't completely lost your edge." Baus felt a cold shiver run through him, a sense of dread settling in his chest. He knew what Raja was capable of, the lengths he would go to enforce his rule, to keep his followers in line. And he knew that refusing the offer would come with consequences, consequences that might extend beyond himself, that might reach the dojo, the people he had come to care about. "What does he want?" Baus asked, his voice tense, his gaze wary as he met the man's cold stare. The man's lips twisted into a smirk, a hint of satisfaction in his eyes as he sensed Baus's hesitation, the conflict that raged within him. "Raja wants you to prove that you haven't gone soft," he replied. "There's a task for you, a test, if you will. If you pass, Raja will consider allowing you back. But if you fail, well," he shrugged, his expression cold. "Let's just say there won't be a place for you anywhere." Baus swallowed, the weight of the choice pressing down on him, the familiar tension of Raja's influence wrapping around him like a noose. He knew that walking away from this test would mean facing Raja's wrath, but accepting it meant betraying the very principles he had come to embrace at Kali Kai. It was a test, yes, but a test of loyalty, a challenge that forced him to choose between the life he had left behind and the new path he had found. "I'll think about it," Baus replied, his voice barely more than a murmur, his gaze drifting to the ground as he tried to hide the turmoil that churned within him. The man nodded, a glint of satisfaction in his eyes. "Good. Just remember, boss, Raja doesn't take betrayal lightly. And if you turn your back on us, you'll have more than just a dojo to worry about." With that, the man turned and disappeared into the shadows, leaving Baus alone. the cold night air pressing down on him as he stood frozen in place, his mind racing, his heart heavy with the weight of the decision that lay before him. When Baus returned to the dojo the next day, his movements were tense, his face shadowed by an expression of deep conflict. Andrew noticed it immediately, the way Baus's usually steady hands seemed to tremble as he gripped the kali sticks, the way his gaze seemed distant, as though his mind were trapped in a place far removed from the present moment. "Baus," Andrew called gently, motioning for him to join him on the far side of the dojo. Baus hesitated, a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes, but he obeyed, his steps slow, weighed down by the turmoil that raged within him. Andrew waited until they were alone, his expression calm, his gaze filled with quiet understanding as he looked at Baus, reading the tension, the conflict that marred his face. "Something's troubling you," he said softly, his tone inviting, gentle, a reminder that Baus was not alone, that he didn't have to carry this burden in silence. Baus looked away, his jaw clenched, his shoulders tense as he struggled to find the words. He wanted to confide in Andrew, to share the weight of the decision that pressed down on him, but a part of him still felt the pull of loyalty, the lingering influence of Raja's control. He was afraid of disappointing Andrew, of betraying the trust he had found in the dojo, the acceptance that had come to mean so much to him. "It's complicated," he murmured, his voice barely more than a whisper, his gaze fixed on the ground as he tried to hide the shame that gnawed at him. Andrew's expression softened, a hint of in his eyes as he stepped closer, his hand resting on Baus's shoulder, grounding him, offering him a quiet support that spoke of trust, of acceptance. "Baus, whatever it is, you don't have to face it alone," he said, his voice steady, filled with a belief that eased the tension in Baus's chest. Kali Kai isn't just a place, it's a community, a family. We're here to support each other, to help each other find strength, even in the face of doubt. Baus looked up, meeting Andrew's gaze, the warmth in his eyes melting a piece of the fear that gripped him. He felt a flicker of hope, a belief that maybe, just maybe, he could share this burden, that he could find a way through the darkness without surrendering the values he had come to hold dear. Someone from my past came to me," he began hesitantly, his voice shaky, his gaze filled with uncertainty. They want me to prove my loyalty, to show that I haven't gone soft." His voice trembled as he spoke, his fists clenching as he tried to suppress the anger, the fear that threatened to overwhelm him. Andrew listened, his expression calm, his gaze filled with understanding as he absorbed Baus's words, the weight of the choice that lay before him. He could see the conflict that raged within Baus, the battle between loyalty and the newfound sense of peace he had found at Kali Kai. "Baus," he said gently, his voice steady, filled with a quiet strength. "Loyalty is a powerful force, but it doesn't have to define you. You have the right to choose your own path, to decide what kind of person you want to be." Baus swallowed, his gaze fixed on Andrew, the doubt in his eyes giving way to a flicker of hope, a belief that maybe, just maybe, he could find a way forward. "But what if I fail?" he whispered, his voice filled with fear, with a vulnerability that he rarely showed. Andrew smiled, a warm, reassuring smile that spoke of trust, of faith. "Failure isn't measured by what others expect of you, Baus," he replied. "It's measured by the choices you make, by the strength you find within yourself to follow a path that aligns with your beliefs, your values. You've already shown strength by choosing Kali Kai, by choosing a path of peace. Trust in that strength." The words settled over Baus like a balm, easing the tension that had weighed down his heart, filling him with a quiet resolve, a belief that he could stand firm, that he could choose his own path without surrendering to the shadows of his past. When Baus joined the others for training that day, his movements were different, his posture steady, his grip on the kali sticks filled with a new sense of purpose. The doubts, the fear, still lingered, but beneath it all was a belief that he could find his way, that he could face whatever test Raja placed before him with the strength he had found within himself, the strength that Kali Kai had instilled in him. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the dojo, Baus knew that, no matter what lay ahead, he would stand firm in his commitment to Kali Kai, to the path of peace that had become his sanctuary, his salvation. Chapter 32. Under Siege, Raja's Forces Attack. The evening was calm, a deceptive tranquility that settled over the dojo like a soft blanket. Inside, the students moved through their warm-ups, their kali sticks moving in fluid arcs as they practiced the basics, focusing on each flutter and flap with quiet intensity. Andrew watched them with a sense of pride, his heart swelling as he took in their dedication, their quiet determination to embody the values that Kali Kai represented. But outside, lurking in the shadows that bordered the property, a different kind of energy had gathered. Raja's forces had arrived, a silent threat that crept closer with each passing moment. Raja himself stood at the edge of the forest, his face hard, his eyes filled with a cold fury as he observed the dojo, his followers gathering around him, each of them brimming with aggression, ready to follow his lead. Inside, Baus felt a chill prickling at the back of his neck, an instinct honed from years of combat that warned him something was amiss. He straightened, his gaze narrowing as he turned toward the windows, scanning the darkness beyond the warm glow of the dojo lights. His heart tightened, the familiar tension of imminent conflict settling over him like an old companion. "Andrew," he said quietly, his voice filled with a quiet urgency as he moved closer. "Something's not right. I can feel it." Andrew nodded, a calm understanding in his eyes as he glanced around the room, noting the way his students' faces tensed at Baus's words. He could sense the unease settling over them, a ripple of fear that began to creep into the dojo. But he remained steady, his presence a grounding force that seemed to soothe their anxieties, to remind them that they were not alone. "Everyone, take a deep breath," he instructed, his voice calm, reassuring. "Remember what we've practiced, the principles that guide us. Kali Kai is about control, about resilience. Whatever happens, we stand together, and we protect each other." The students nodded, their faces filled with determination as they adjusted their grips on their kali sticks, grounding themselves in the philosophy that had become their anchor. Max glanced at Stacy, a small nod of encouragement passing between them as they steeled themselves, their expressions filled with a quiet resolve. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps echoed outside, a heavy, determined tread that sent a chill through the air. Raja's followers stepped into view, their faces hard, their postures brimming with aggression as they positioned themselves in front of the dojo, a silent threat that radiated through the night. Raja took a step forward, his gaze fixed on Andrew, his face a mask of cold fury as he observed the calm resolve that filled the dojo. "Andrew," he called, his voice cutting through the silence, laced with disdain. "You think you can hide behind this facade of peace, this illusion of strength, but true power lies in control, in dominance. Surrender now, or face the consequences." Andrew's expression remained calm, his gaze steady as he met Raja's glare with a quiet defiance. He took a step forward, his posture relaxed, his movements grounded as he addressed Raja, his voice carrying a gentle but unyielding strength. "Raja, we don't seek conflict. We believe in a different path, one that values peace over power. This dojo isn't a place of violence, it's a place of resilience, of inner strength." Raja's face twisted with anger, a sneer pulling at his lips as he turned to his followers, gesturing for them to advance. "Then let's see if your precious resilience can withstand the strength of true Eskrima." With that, his men surged forward, their faces hard, their weapons raised as they moved to storm the dojo. The students braced themselves, their hearts pounding, their grips tightening around their kali sticks as they prepared to defend their sanctuary, to stand together against the aggression that threatened to the peace they had built. Andrew moved to the front, his presence a calming force that steadied the students, grounding them in the principles they had come to cherish. "Remember," he called, his voice filled with quiet conviction. "We don't meet force with force. We deflect, we redirect, we protect without harm." Baus took his position beside Andrew, his face set with determination. His kali sticks held steady as he watched Raja's followers approach, each step filled with a threat that seemed to through the night. His heart pounded, the tension of his old instincts battling with the calm resolve that Kali Kai had instilled in him. This was his test, his chance to prove his commitment to the path he had chosen. As the first attacker lunged, Baus moved with a precision honed from years of training, his kali stick intercepting the blow in a controlled flutter, redirecting the force with a skill that left his opponent stumbling. He stepped forward, his movements fluid, each swing of his stick measured, purposeful, a demonstration of the control he had learned under Andrew's guidance. The other students followed suit, their kali sticks moving in unison as they responded to the assault with calm resilience, their faces set with determination as they absorbed each strike, each blow, deflecting and redirecting the aggression without succumbing to it. Max moved with a newfound confidence, his movements steady as he matched his opponent's strikes with fluid flaps, his gaze focused, his posture filled with a quiet strength. Stacy, though smaller in stature, moved with a grace that belied her strength, her kali sticks moving in controlled arcs as she deflected each blow, her face filled with determination, with a belief in the values that had become her foundation. She felt the impact of each strike resonate through her, but she remained steady, grounded in the philosophy that had given her a sense of purpose, a belief in her own strength. Raja watched, his face twisted with anger, as he took in the calm resolve that radiated from the dojo, the way Andrew and his students stood together, their movements a testament to the philosophy that defied his brutal teachings. He clenched his fists, a bitter rage filling him as he gestured for his men to press harder, to break through the defenses that seemed unyielding in the face of their aggression. Baus found himself face to face with one of Raja's senior followers, a man he had once trained alongside, whose face was hardened by years of violence, of loyalty to Raja's philosophy. The man sneered, his grip on his weapon tightening as he prepared to strike, his movements filled with a force that spoke of dominance, of a need to overpower. But Baus was ready. He shifted his stance, his kali sticks held steady as he met the man's gaze, his expression calm, unyielding. When the man lunged, Baus moved in a swift, controlled flap, intercepting the blow with a precision that left his opponent off balance. He followed with a series of flutters, each movement redirecting the force, guiding it away from harm. "Baus," the man growled, his face twisted with anger as he struggled to regain his footing. "You've turned soft. You think this peace makes you strong?" Baus held his ground, his gaze steady, his voice filled with a quiet conviction. "Strength doesn't come from violence. It comes from control, from choosing a path that doesn't require harm. I'm not who I used to be. I've found something worth protecting." The man's face twisted in a sneer, but before he could respond, Baus moved in a final, decisive flap, deflecting the man's weapon and sending him stumbling back, his balance broken, his aggression neutralized. Around him, the students continued to defend the dojo, their movements filled with a quiet resilience, a strength that went beyond physical power. They moved in unison, each of them grounded in the belief that they could protect without harming, that they could stand together in the face of fear without succumbing to it. Andrew watched with a quiet pride, his heart swelling as he took in the determination, the resilience that filled his students, the way they embodied the values he had worked so hard to instill. He met Raja's gaze, his expression calm, unyielding, a silent message that he would not be broken, that Kali Kai would not bow to violence. Raja's face contorted with rage, his fists clenched as he took in the scene before him, the calm resilience that defied his aggression, the strength that refused to yield to his demands. He gestured to his followers, his voice filled with a bitter fury as he commanded them to retreat, his expression dark, his pride wounded by the defeat he had not anticipated. As Raja's forces withdrew, the dojo fell into a quiet stillness, the tension slowly dissipating as the students lowered their kali sticks, their faces filled with a mixture of relief and pride. They had faced the storm, had stood firm in their commitment to peace, and they had emerged stronger, united, a testament to the resilience that defined Kali Kai. Andrew gathered them together, his gaze filled with pride, his voice steady as he addressed them. Tonight, you showed the strength that lies in unity, in control. Kali Kai isn't just a philosophy. It's a way of life, a belief that peace is worth protecting. And you have proven that strength can exist without violence, that power can be grounded in resilience. The students nodded, their faces filled with determination, a belief that they had found something worth standing for, something that gave them a purpose, a sense of belonging. And as they looked around at each other, they knew that they were not just students of Kali Kai. They were a family, united in their commitment to a path that defied fear. Chapter 33, Facing the Past, Raja and Baus's Final Stand. The night was thick with a cold silence as Baus moved through the forest, his footsteps steady, but his heart pounding with a mix of anticipation and resolve. He had slipped away from the dojo after the others had gone, drawn by a need to confront the shadows of his past once and for all. He knew Raja was still out there, simmering with the anger of his defeat, his pride wounded by the stand Kali Kai had taken, and Baus could feel the weight of the confrontation that awaited him, a final reckoning with the man who had once been his mentor, his leader. As he approached the edge of the clearing where he had agreed to meet Raja, Baus steeled himself, his grip on his kali sticks firm but calm, a reminder of the strength he had found in Kali Kai. The forest was dark, the moon casting a faint light through the trees, illuminating the shadows that stretched across the ground. And there, in the center of the clearing, stood Raja, his posture tense, his face hard, eyes gleaming with a cold fury that sent a shiver through the air. "Baus," Raja said, his voice laced with disdain as he looked his former disciple up and down, taking in the calm resolve that had replaced the aggression he had once fostered. "So, you've come crawling back, hoping to prove yourself worthy again? I see Andrew's so-called teachings have turned you soft." Baus met Raja's gaze, his face calm, unyielding, a quiet strength radiating from him that seemed to cut through the chill in the air. "I haven't come to prove anything," he replied, his voice steady, filled with a confidence that Raja had never seen in him before. "I'm here to confront my past, to end whatever hold you think you have over me. I chose a different path, one that doesn't require me to hurt others to prove my strength." Raja's face twisted into a sneer, his eyes narrowing as he stepped forward, his movements filled with a controlled menace. "You're deluding yourself, Baus. Strength isn't found in peace. It's forged in dominance, in the power to destroy. Andrew has filled your head with nonsense, turned you into a shadow of the man you once were." Baus remained unfazed, his posture relaxed but alert. His kali sticks held loosely at his sides, a silent reminder of the discipline he had come to embody. He could feel the echoes of Raja's teachings, the lingering pull of the power he had once craved, but beneath it all was a deeper conviction, a belief that his true strength lay in the calm resolve he had found at Kali Kai. "Strength isn't defined by the power to harm," he said, his voice unwavering, filled with the quiet assurance that Andrew had instilled in him. "True strength lies in control, in the choice to walk away from violence. It's harder to preserve than it is to destroy, And that's a strength that you will never understand. Raja's sneer deepened, his face twisting with contempt as he gestured to the shadows behind him. Then let's put your precious strength to the test, shall we? He said, his tone filled with mockery. Krill! From the darkness, a figure stepped forward, his face hard, his eyes filled with a cold fury that matched Raja's. Baus recognized him immediately, the man he had faced during the attack on the dojo, a former comrade who had once trained beside him, whose loyalty to Raja was as fierce as his aggression. Krill held his weapons with a confident grip, his stance filled with a readiness, a threat that hung heavy in the air. Baus took a deep breath, steadying himself, his gaze calm as he met Krill's challenging stare. He could feel the weight of the confrontation, the final test of his commitment to Kali Kai's principles, and he knew that this was his chance to prove, not to Raja or to Krill, but to himself, that he had truly embraced a new path. Krill sneered, his face twisted with disdain as he raised his weapon, his movements brimming with aggression. So, you're a pacifist now, boss? He taunted, his voice filled with contempt. Let's see how long that lasts. With a fierce growl, Krill lunged, his weapon slicing through the air in a brutal arc, aimed directly at Boss's side. But Baus was ready. He moved with a calm precision, his body flowing into a controlled flutter as he intercepted the strike, his Kali stick meeting Krill's weapon with a sharp crack that reverberated through the clearing. Krill stumbled slightly, surprised by the firmness of Boss's defense, the skill that underpinned his movements. He recovered quickly, his face hardening as he launched another strike, his weapon swinging in a vicious arc toward Boss's shoulder. But again, Baus moved with a fluid grace, his Kali stick deflecting the blow in a smooth flap, redirecting the force with a skill that left Krill momentarily off balance. You've changed, Krill spat, his voice filled with bitterness as he took a step back, his posture tense, his eyes narrowing as he took in Boss's calm demeanor. I remember when you were ruthless, when you would have done whatever it took to win. Now look at you, hiding behind Andrew's empty ideals. Baus met his gaze, his expression calm, unyielding, a quiet conviction in his eyes. Strength isn't defined by aggression, Krill, he replied, his voice steady, filled with the quiet assurance that had become his anchor. It takes more skill to preserve than it does to destroy. And that's a skill you'll never understand as long as you're trapped in Raja's shadow. Krill's face twisted with anger, a low growl escaping his lips as he launched another assault, his strikes filled with a fury that spoke of frustration, of a need to overpower, to dominate. But Baus moved with a level of control that Krill had never seen before, each movement a testament to the discipline he had found in Kali Kai. His Kali sticks flowed through the air in smooth, controlled arcs, each flutter and flap deflecting Krill's blows, absorbing the force without retaliating, without escalating the violence. As the battle continued, Krill's frustration grew, his movements becoming erratic, filled with an aggression that left him vulnerable, open to the calm precision of Boss's defenses. Baus could see the anger in Krill's eyes, the disbelief that he could not break through Boss's resolve, that his brute force was no match for the quiet strength that Baus had embraced. Finally, Krill stumbled, his balance compromised as he swung wildly, his face twisted with a mixture of anger and disbelief. Baus took a step back, lowering his Kali sticks, his posture relaxed, his gaze filled with a quiet pity as he looked at Krill, the man he had once called a comrade, now trapped in a cycle of violence that he could not escape. This isn't strength, Krill, he said, his voice soft, filled with a sadness that cut through the tension in the air. Strength is in the choice to protect, to preserve, to stand firm without harming. I've learned a path that doesn't require me to hurt others to prove my worth, and I'm done with the violence. With those words, Baus turned his back on Krill, his movements calm, unhurried, a silent declaration that he no longer needed to prove himself, that he had found a strength that went beyond aggression, beyond the need for dominance. Krill watched, his face contorted with a mixture of anger and confusion, his grip on his weapon tightening as he struggled to comprehend the transformation that had taken place within Baus. Raja stepped forward, his face dark with rage, his eyes burning with a cold fury as he watched Baus walk away, his calm resolve a silent defiance that spoke louder than any words. "You think you can just walk away?" he snarled, his voice filled with bitterness. "You're a coward, Baus. Kali Kai has made you weak, turned you into a shadow of the man you once were." Baus stopped, turning to face Raja, his gaze steady, unyielding, filled with a quiet strength that defied the anger in Raja's eyes. "I'm stronger now than I ever was under your influence," he replied, his voice calm, filled with a conviction that left no room for doubt. "Strength isn't found in the power to destroy. It's in the choice to protect, to preserve, to stand for something greater than yourself." Raja's face twisted, a sneer pulling at his lips as he stepped forward, his posture tense, his fists clenched as he glared at Baus, the fury in his eyes blazing with a bitter intensity. But Baus held his ground, his expression calm, a silent defiance that spoke of the freedom he had found, the hold that Raja had lost over him. "You don't own me, Raja," he said, his voice filled with a quiet assurance that cut through the night, a declaration that echoed through the darkness. "I've chosen my path, one that doesn't need your approval, your control. I'm done with you." And with that, Baus turned, his steps steady, unhurried, a silent victory that left Raja standing alone in the clearing, his face twisted with rage, his pride shattered by the strength he could not break, the loyalty he could not reclaim. As Baus walked away, a sense of peace settled over him, a quiet freedom that filled him with a belief in the path he had chosen, the strength he had found within himself. And he knew that he was no longer defined by his past, that he had embraced a new way, one grounded in the principles of Kali Kai, a legacy of peace, of resilience, that he would carry with him, unshaken, unbroken. Chapter 34. The Power of Forgiveness, Acceptance in the Dojo. Baus returned to the dojo at dawn, the sky painted with soft hues of pink and lavender as the first light of day broke over the trees. He moved slowly, each step heavy with the weight of his own thoughts, a lingering turmoil that churned within him, stirring up doubts, regrets, fears he thought he'd left behind. The confrontation with Raja had left him victorious, yes, but also raw. The wounds of his past actions brought to the surface in a way he couldn't ignore. As he reached the dojo, he paused at the threshold, his gaze drifting over the space that had come to mean so much to him. In the quiet, he could almost feel the energy of the place, a sense of calm that wrapped around him, reminding him that he was no longer alone, that he had chosen a different path. Yet, despite the peace that settled around him, an ache lingered in his chest, a nagging voice that whispered of his past, of the harm he had caused, the violence he had once wielded without hesitation. He stepped inside, his footsteps soft on the polished floor as he moved to the center of the room. The dojo was empty, the morning air thick with stillness, and for a moment, Baus allowed himself to close his eyes, to take in the quiet, to let the calm of the dojo seep into his soul. But the doubts remained, clinging to him like shadows, a reminder that he was still haunted by the man he had once been. As the students began to arrive, they greeted Baus with nods of respect, their expressions warm, accepting. He returned their nods, a small, hesitant smile playing at the corners of his mouth, though his gaze remained distant, the weight of his thoughts pulling him inward. Andrew noticed it immediately, the subtle tension in Baus's posture, the flicker of doubt in his eyes. He approached quietly, his gaze calm, filled with understanding as he stood beside Baus, his presence a grounding force that seemed to ease the tension in the air. "Baus," he said gently, his voice a soft invitation. "You're carrying something. I can see it in your eyes." Baus looked down, his grip tightening around his collie sticks as he struggled to find the words, the courage to voice the doubts that gnawed at him. He knew that he had chosen the path of peace, that he had walked away from the violence that had once defined him, but a part of him still felt unworthy, tainted by the memories of his past actions. I don't know if I deserve this," he murmured, his voice barely above a whisper, his gaze fixed on the ground as though afraid to meet Andrew's eyes. "I've done things, hurt people in ways I can't take back. And even though I've tried to change, to walk a different path, I can't help but feel that maybe this isn't meant for me." Andrew placed a hand on Baus's shoulder, his grip firm, reassuring, a reminder that he wasn't alone. "The journey to forgiveness is not an easy one, Baus," he said softly, his tone filled with, "It's natural to carry doubts, to feel the weight of past mistakes. But forgiveness, true forgiveness, begins within yourself, and we're here to help you find that." The students, sensing the gravity of the moment, gathered around, their expressions filled with warmth, with quiet encouragement as they looked at Baus, each of them a silent testament to the acceptance, the understanding that Kali Kai represented. Max stepped forward, his face filled with a kindness that seemed to radiate through the room as he looked up at Baus, his gaze unwavering. "We've all made mistakes, Baus," Max said, his voice soft but filled with conviction. "What matters isn't who you were, but who you're choosing to become. You've shown us strength, resilience, and a commitment to peace. That's what defines you now, not the past." Stacy nodded in agreement, her gaze filled with quiet admiration as she met Baus's eyes. "You taught me that strength doesn't have to be about fighting," she added, her tone gentle, sincere. "That's something I'll always carry with me. And I think that's something worth forgiving." Baus looked around, his gaze drifting over the faces of the students who had come to mean so much to him, each of them a reminder of the acceptance, the forgiveness he had found in the dojo. His heart swelled with a mixture of gratitude and relief, the doubts that had once clung to him slowly dissolving, replaced by a belief that maybe, just maybe, he could find a way to forgive himself. Andrew placed a hand on Baus's shoulder, his expression calm, his gaze filled with quiet pride. "Forgiveness is not a single act, Baus," he said gently. "It's a journey, a process that takes time, patience, and you've already shown the courage to choose a different path. Now, it's about allowing yourself to embrace that choice, to trust in the strength you've found within." Baus nodded, a small, hesitant smile breaking through the tension that had once clouded his face. He felt a sense of peace settle over him, a quiet assurance that he was truly accepted, that he was part of a community that valued him, not for his past, but for the person he was becoming. Andrew turned to the students, his gaze steady, filled with a quiet intensity that captured their attention, grounding them in the lesson he was about to share. "Today we'll be focusing on a lesson that Baus has exemplified," he began, his voice calm but filled with purpose. "In Kali Kai, our greatest strength lies not in the power to harm, but in the ability to protect, to preserve peace. Ending a conflict without violence requires a level of skill, of control, that goes beyond traditional arts." He glanced at Baus, a small nod of acknowledgement passing between them, a reminder that this lesson was born from the journey they had both undertaken, the path of peace that had become their guiding principle. "True strength," Andrew continued, his gaze moving from one student to the next, "is found in the choice to resolve conflict peacefully. It takes courage, resilience, and a deep commitment to control. And that is what we strive for here at Kali Kai." The students listened, their faces filled with respect, with a newfound understanding of the philosophy that had come to define their practice. Max felt a surge of pride as he looked at Baus, a belief that his friend had truly embraced the path of peace, that he had found a strength that went beyond aggression, beyond the need for dominance. Andrew guided them through a series of movements, each one a demonstration of the control, the precision that defined Kali Kai. The students mirrored his movements, their collie sticks moving in fluid arcs, each flutter and flap a reminder of the discipline, the restraint that lay at the heart of their training. Baus moved with a newfound ease, his posture relaxed, his movements filled with a quiet confidence that spoke of the peace he had found within himself. As he practiced, he felt the weight of his doubts slipping away, replaced by a belief in the path he had chosen, a belief that he was truly accepted, that he had found a family, a community that valued him for who he was, not for the mistakes of his past. At the end of the session, Andrew gathered the students together, his expression calm, his gaze filled with pride as he looked at each of them, a silent acknowledgement of the strength they had found, the resilience they had come to embody. "Today, you have all shown the power of forgiveness, of acceptance," he said, his voice steady, filled with a quiet conviction. "Kali Kai is more than a martial art. It's a philosophy, a way of life that values peace, resilience, and the courage to choose a different path. Baus's journey is a testament to that philosophy, a reminder that true strength lies not in violence, but in the choice to protect, to preserve peace." The students nodded, their faces filled with determination, a belief that they were part of something greater, a community that valued them, that offered them a sanctuary, a place of belonging. And as they looked at Baus, they knew that they had witnessed a transformation, a journey of redemption, of forgiveness, that had strengthened not only him, but each of them, grounding them in the philosophy that had become their anchor. Baus felt a sense of peace settle over him, a quiet belief that he was finally free of the shadows of his past, that he had found a path worth walking, a legacy worth preserving. And as he looked around at the faces of his friends, his family, he knew that he had found a place where he truly belonged, a place that had taught him the power of forgiveness, the strength of acceptance, a place he would carry with him, unbroken, unshaken, grounded in the principles that had given him a second chance. Chapter 35. Healing Wounds, Lori and Max's Journey. The early morning sunlight poured through the windows of the dojo, casting a gentle glow over the room. Lori stood at the edge of the mat, watching Max as he moved with quiet confidence, his collie sticks flowing through the air in smooth, precise arcs. Each movement was steady, grounded, a testament to the discipline, the strength he had found within himself since they had first stepped into Andrew's dojo. For Lori, watching Max train was like seeing a transformation unfold, a shift from the boy who had once struggled with self-doubt and frustration into a young man filled with a quiet resilience, a newfound sense of purpose that radiated through every move he made. Her heart swelled with pride, and she felt a wave of gratitude wash over her, a recognition of how much they had both healed since finding Kali Kai. Max completed his final flutter, letting the momentum of the movement fade as he brought his sticks to rest at his sides. He took a deep breath, his gaze steady, his posture relaxed, yet filled with an energy that seemed to pulse through him, a strength that came not from force, but from control, from the heart of what Kali Kai had taught him. Lori stepped onto the mat, her face soft with admiration as she approached him, her heart full of unspoken gratitude. "Max," she said quietly, her voice filled with pride, with a mother's love that shone through her words. "Watching you like this, it's like seeing you come into your own. You found a strength I always knew was in you." Max looked at her, his face breaking into a small, shy smile, a flicker of gratitude in his eyes. "It's thanks to Andrew," he replied softly. "And to you, Mom, for bringing me here, for helping me see that strength isn't just about being the best. It's about finding something worth standing for, something worth protecting." He held out one of his collie sticks, turning it over in his hands, a sense of reverence in his movements as he looked down at the polished wood. feeling the weight, the power it represented. Andrew's taught me so much, he continued, his voice steady, filled with a quiet conviction. Kali Kai, it's more than a martial art, it's like a martial heart. It's not just about technique or power, it's about finding a purpose, a way to live with strength and peace. Lori felt her heart swell at his words, a sense of pride mingling with the warmth of knowing that her son had found a philosophy, a way of life that would guide him, ground him as he grew. She reached out, resting a hand on his shoulder, a silent gesture of support, of acceptance. You've become stronger than I ever could have imagined, she said, her voice soft, filled with emotion. And you're right. Kali Kai is more than just an art. It's a way to live, a way to heal. They shared a quiet moment, standing side by side in the warmth of the dojo, the silence filled with a sense of peace, a feeling of belonging that had come to define their time here. For Lori, the dojo had become a sanctuary, a place where she had found a renewed sense of purpose, a strength she had thought lost after the accident that had shattered their lives. As they moved through the morning training, Andrew watched them from a distance, his face calm, his gaze filled with quiet pride as he took in the growth, the resilience that radiated from them. He had seen them both evolve, had witnessed the transformation that had come through their dedication, their commitment to the path they had chosen. When the training session ended, Lori and Max approached Andrew, their expressions soft, filled with a mixture of gratitude and admiration. Max looked up at Andrew, his gaze steady, a spark of confidence in his eyes that spoke of the trust, the respect he held for the man who had guided him, who had helped him find his way. Andrew, he began, his voice steady but filled with emotion. Thank you. For everything. For teaching us that strength doesn't have to be about fighting, that it can be about finding something worth standing for. Andrew's face softened, a small, humble smile tugging at the corners of his mouth as he placed a hand on Max's shoulder, a silent acknowledgement of the journey they had taken together. Max, he replied gently, his voice filled with warmth, with a quiet pride that came from watching his students grow. The strength you've found, the resilience, it was always within you. Kali Kai just helped you see it. Max nodded, his face filled with gratitude, a belief in the philosophy that had come to define his life, that had given him a way to channel his energy, his determination, into something meaningful. I never realized how much I could do, he admitted, his voice filled with quiet wonder. But now it's like every movement, every lesson, it's all connected. Kali Kai isn't just something I do, it's something I am. Lori stepped forward, her gaze soft, filled with gratitude as she looked at Andrew, a silent acknowledgement of the role he had played in their lives. Andrew, she began, her voice warm, steady. You've given us more than just a place to train. You've given us a family, a community. Max and I, we were both carrying so much fear, so much pain. And you showed us that we could let go, that we could find strength, not in anger, but in peace. Andrew nodded, his expression calm, a quiet understanding in his gaze as he listened. Absorbing their gratitude, their words a reminder of why he had chosen this path, why he had committed himself to the philosophy that defined Kali Kai. Kali Kai is more than a dojo, he replied softly. It's a way of life, a way to find resilience in the face of fear, and watching you both embrace that, watching you grow, it's been an honor. Max looked down at his Kali sticks, a sense of reverence filling his gaze as he turned them over in his hands, feeling the weight, the strength they represented. Kali Kai is a martial heart, he murmured, his voice filled with quiet conviction. It's not just about the moves, it's about the heart behind them, the purpose that drives each movement. I think that's what you've taught me, Andrew. Andrew smiled, his eyes filled with a quiet pride as he placed a hand on Max's shoulder, a silent acknowledgement of the depth of understanding, the growth he had witnessed in his young student. "You're right, Max," he replied gently. "At its core, Kali Kai is about the heart, the intention behind each action. You found that, and it will guide you, ground you, no matter where life takes you." They stood in silence for a moment, a sense of peace settling over them, the quiet strength of their bond a testament to the journey they had taken together, the growth, the resilience they had found within the dojo. As they turned to leave, Lori glanced back at the dojo, her heart filled with a sense of gratitude, a belief that she had found something worth holding on to, a sanctuary that had become a part of her, a place of healing, of peace. Outside, the world seemed brighter, the air filled with the promise of a new day, a new beginning. Lori and Max walked side by side, their steps steady, grounded in the strength they had found, the resilience that would carry them forward, a belief that they were truly part of something greater, something that went beyond themselves, a legacy of peace, of resilience, that they would carry with them, unbroken, unshaken, grounded in the heart of Kali Kai. Chapter 36, New Beginnings, Expanding Kali Kai. The dojo was alive with activity, a bustling energy that filled the space as students moved through their drills, their kali sticks slicing through the air in fluid arcs. Andrew stood at the center, his calm gaze observing each movement, each subtle shift in posture, his presence a grounding force that anchored the dojo in a quiet strength. In the months that had followed the community's rallying support, Kali Kai had grown, its philosophy of peace and resilience spreading beyond the walls of the dojo. Andrew had seen the impact Kali Kai had on his students, the strength it had given them, and he knew that there were others, people outside the community, who could benefit from the teachings, from the sanctuary the dojo had become. As the morning session wound down, Andrew gathered the students together, his face calm, his eyes filled with quiet purpose as he addressed them. "Today I have something special to share with you," he began, his voice steady, filled with a warmth that resonated through the room. "Kali Kai has grown, not just as a practice, but as a community, a family. And I believe it's time to share that strength with others, to bring Kali Kai to those who may be seeking balance, peace, and purpose." The students listened intently, their faces filled with admiration, with a quiet excitement as they took in his words, understanding the depth of his vision, the commitment that had driven him to expand Kali Kai beyond the walls of their dojo. "Together," Andrew continued, his gaze sweeping over them, "we will bring Kali Kai to neighboring communities, reaching out to those who may be looking for a different path, a philosophy that values resilience over power, peace over conflict. This is more than a martial art. It's a martial heart, a way of living with intention, with strength and—" Max, standing beside Lori, felt a thrill of excitement ripple through him, his heart swelling with pride as he looked at Andrew, understanding that they were part of something far greater than themselves, a legacy of peace that would continue to grow, to flourish. Baus stood at the back, his face calm, thoughtful as he absorbed Andrew's words. He had come so far on his own journey, had found acceptance, forgiveness, and a sense of purpose he had never known before. And now, the idea of sharing that strength with others, of passing on the teachings that had changed his life, filled him with a quiet resolve, a commitment to Kali Kai's values that had become his foundation. As the students dispersed, moving to their places on the mat to begin the next session, Andrew approached Baus, his expression calm, filled with a quiet pride as he looked at his former student, now a trusted mentor, a man who had come to embody the philosophy of Kali Kai. "Baus," he began, his voice gentle, "I'd like you to take on a new role here. With Kali Kai expanding, we'll need someone to help guide the new students, to teach them the principles that define our path." Baus's eyes widened slightly, a mixture of surprise and gratitude flickering across his face as he took in Andrew's words. He felt a surge of responsibility settle over him, a belief that he had truly found his place, a role that would allow him to give back, to share the strength he had found in Kali Kai. I would be honored, he replied, his voice steady, filled with a quiet conviction that spoke of the journey he had taken, the transformation that had brought him here. Thank you, Andrew. I promise I won't let you down. Andrew smiled, a warm, reassuring smile that softened his features, his gaze filled with trust. I know you won't, boss. You've shown us all what it means to choose peace, to find strength and resilience. You'll make an incredible mentor. Boss nodded, a small, humble smile breaking through his calm expression as he looked around the dojo, taking in the faces of the students who had become his family, his community. He felt a sense of purpose settle within him, a belief that he was exactly where he was meant to be, that he had found a way to give back, to guide others along the path he had come to cherish. As the weeks passed, word of Kali Kai spread, drawing people from neighboring communities, individuals seeking balance, healing, a way to find peace in a world often filled with conflict. They arrived in small groups, each one filled with a mixture of curiosity and hope, eager to learn, to experience the philosophy that had captured the hearts of so many. Baus took on his role as mentor with quiet dedication, guiding the new students with a patience, and that reflected the teachings he had embraced. He moved through the training sessions with a calm focus, each movement a demonstration of the control, the restraint that defined Kali Kai. He showed them the flutters, the flaps, his Kali sticks moving in fluid, graceful arcs that spoke of a strength rooted not in aggression, but in peace. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the dojo, Baus gathered a small group of new students together, his face calm, his gaze steady as he addressed them. Kali Kai isn't just about learning how to defend yourself, he began, his voice steady, filled with a quiet conviction. It's about finding a way to live with purpose, with intention. It's about choosing peace, even when the world around you may demand otherwise. The students listened intently, their faces filled with respect, with admiration as they took in his words, understanding the depth of the philosophy that lay at the heart of Kali Kai. For many of them, the idea of finding strength in peace was a revelation, a reminder that they could be powerful without aggression, resilient without harm. Max, who had stayed to watch the session, felt a surge of pride as he looked at Baus, a belief that his friend had truly found his place, that he had become a leader, a mentor who could guide others with the same commitment that Andrew had shown him. Lori stood beside him, her expression soft, filled with a quiet pride as she took in the growth, the resilience that radiated from both Baus and Max, a reminder of how far they had come, of the strength they had found within the dojo, within themselves. As the session came to an end, Baus watched the students disperse, his heart filled with a sense of peace, a belief that he was part of something greater, something worth preserving. He felt Andrew's presence beside him, a silent acknowledgement of the journey they had taken, the path that had led them both here, to a place of healing, of purpose. Kali Kai is growing, Andrew said quietly, his voice filled with a warmth that spoke of pride, of a belief in the legacy they were building together. And it's because of people like you, Baus, people who have chosen to embrace a path of peace, who have found the courage to let go of the past and walk forward with resilience. Baus looked at him, a small, humble smile breaking through his calm expression. I never thought I'd find a place like this, he admitted, his voice soft, filled with gratitude. But Kali Kai, it's become a home, a family, and I want to do everything I can to help it grow, to share the peace, the strength I've found here. Andrew placed a hand on his shoulder, a silent gesture of support, of trust. You already have, Baus. And as we continue to expand, I know you'll be there to guide others, to show them the way. As they stood together, the dojo quiet around them, Baus felt a sense of fulfillment settle over him, a belief that he was exactly where he was meant to be, that he had found a purpose, a path that would guide him for the rest of his life. The next morning, as the dojo filled with students, both new and old, Andrew led them through a series of drills, his movements calm, controlled, each flutter and flap a demonstration of the strength, the resilience that defined Kali Kai. The students moved with him, their kali sticks slicing through the air in unison, each movement a testament to the philosophy that had become their foundation, a belief that strength could exist without harm, that power could be rooted in peace. And as they practiced, as they moved through the drills with a quiet determination, Andrew knew that Kali Kai would continue to grow, that its legacy would live on, a sanctuary for those seeking balance, a place of healing, of purpose, where they could find strength, resilience, and above all, peace.